Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, we're going to talk about keeping your eyes downrange. Good day, fabulous audience. Thank you for joining me on the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. My name is Kale Houser. I appreciate your time and willingness to join me. Hopefully, what I have to tell you today is beneficial. If anything, as a mindset, as a leader, our job is to have that vision. I think I've talked about this in a previous episode. Part of our job as the leader of any type of organization is have that long-range vision, is to be able to see the future, to be able to predict the future, at least in the sense of this is where, if we do X, Y, and Z, this is where we're going to end up at. And I've thought about this analogy a lot in the past, but never as it applies to business. And this was recently brought to my attention. It was kind of used in a business sense, this analogy that I'm about to share with you. A little suspense going on here. But it was applied in a arena in a sense that I hadn't really thought about it before. I thought about it in other avenues and other mindset issues, but never so much in a business. And the analogy is this. When you're driving your vehicle, or any car, or flying your plane, or riding your bike or your motorcycle, kicking your skateboard, kicking your scooter, any form of transportation where you are moving in a direction forward, ideally, or theoretically, let's just say in a straight line at this point. And there's the potential for other things around you. When you're doing this, and maybe not consciously, but not on purpose, but just as part of your method of driving, you're looking down the road. You're looking down the path, down the trail, because you've probably discovered, maybe as at a young age, when you look down, when you look right in what's in front of you, that's where you go. If you're looking to your left over here, then you start, especially if you're riding a bike, you kind of start leaning to the left. If you're on a skateboard and you're looking over there, or you're looking at that one big crack that's coming up that, is just going to jack you up because your skateboard's not designed to go over cracks like that, and you only focus on that crack as you're kicking, well, guess what? It's like almost no matter what you do, your skateboard's going to pull to that crack and you're just going to hit it and whammy, right? Or hopefully you've done something to mitigate before that. And this is something I remember going back to my motorcycle training days when we had to, as part of the Air Force, in order to be authorized to ride your motorcycle on base, you had to show that you've taken the motorcycle safety course for whatever state that you're in. In my case, it was New Mexico at the time. And I remember very distinctly the instructor, very experienced older gentleman, probably had been riding motorcycles for all of his adult life, 40 years plus. He basically, told us you need to look where you want to go, not where you're afraid to go, but where you want to go, right? So as you're coming up on that curve in the road, you're not looking at the, let's just say it's a left-hand curve. You're not looking at that right lane that, is the cliff drop off because you're up in a mountain. You're looking on the inside lane towards the left of how you want to go. And that's just naturally the rest of your body will make things happen with the motorcycle and controlling it to move the motorcycle that direction. Because where you focus on is where you're going to go. And that's kind of the overarching theme of this podcast today, this topic. But I wanted to kind of help you visualize that a little bit. And the same thing can be said of NASCAR. And I've thought about this a lot too, this variance of, okay, here you got NASCAR. And I'm not, a NASCAR junkie or fan. I don't know that I've even ever seen a full NASCAR race, let alone, could name a driver other than, whoever the super famous ones are. But here they are going 200 and some miles an hour. Just flying. And there's 12 plus cars on there, and they're driving an inch apart from each other, occasionally, of course, rubbing and all that kind of stuff. Days of Thunder, rubbing's racing. But the point being is they're not looking left and right to them constantly. They're, certainly checking their mirrors and seeing who their competition is and how to outmaneuver them, but they're looking forward, because the second they start looking left and right is when they start hitting the walls. It's when they start kind of swerving back and forth in their lane instead of just blasting down towards their end goal. And you've probably seen this and experienced this, and this, I would argue, contributes to a large percentage of vehicle crashes in the United States, is people on their cell phones. everyone thinks that you can multitask and that, yep, here I am driving down the freeway or my street or whatever, and I just look over just slightly over to my right, because I'm right-handed and I've got my cell phone here and I start looking at it. Well, what does your left hand do? You lean that way. You don't feel it. You're certainly not intending to, but because your head is now turned to the right, your attention is now right in front of you instead of down the road, your body starts to go towards that. And then hopefully you catch it, or you feel the rumble strips along the side, or somebody honks at you as you're going into their lane. And you catch yourself and you're like, man, I didn't even know that I was departing my lane, that I was starting to swerve, ever so slightly because I was looking down. Well, that's why, is because you were looking down, you were looking to your left or right. Certainly like if you're doing the classic dad or mom move and whapping kids in the back seat and you're trying to focus on the road, but you turn around, your other arm just naturally follows that body movement because you've lost that attention and focus down range of where you're trying to go in that straight line. And you see this too a little bit played out, a slightly different angle of this principle in a parking lot. And you could be traveling down the freeway, 65, 75, 95 miles an hour, whatever it is for you as you're going down the freeway, depending on what state you're in. And you're just fine. You're staying in your lane. You're staying like, plus or minus 2 or 3 inches on each side. No big deal because you're looking down the road, boom, 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 boom. But then you get into a parking lot where there's just as many cars around you, right? Because on a freeway, you've got cars on left and right of you, sometimes multiple lanes and all that kind of good stuff. But you're going, 80 miles an hour and it's no big deal. Changing lanes and all that, passing cars. But you put yourself in that same scenario in the parking lot. And maybe this is different for you, but I've noticed this, and I certainly notice it with Liz, my wife. When you're going 2 miles an hour or trying to back up into a parking spot, you become so ultra aware of the vehicles around you, the pillars around you, the parking spaces, whatever that is, those obstacles around you that could potentially damage your vehicle, that you kind of freak out a little bit and everything is so over exaggerated. And it's so fascinating because, well, wait a minute, like you're literally, barely backing up, or you're going 4 miles an hour through this parking lot. Why are you so concerned about getting that close to that vehicle? Like you can just hit the brakes. But when you're driving down the freeway, I remember there's times where I've looked over and I'm literally, 6 or 7 inches away from the guy next to me or things of that nature. And it's such a fascinating just way that we kind of trick ourselves or don't trick ourselves, I think. But as this applies to business, you as the leader, your job, your sole purpose is to look down the road at all times and drive there probably as fast as you can, right? In the most efficient way you can get there. And when you start taking your eyes off of that downrange thing, like, oh, here's this problem that just popped up, so I'm going to focus on this. Or, oh, bam, this client just shut down and we lost that account, boom, so that just threw a wrench in our plans. I'm going to focus on this. Well, what happens? You start getting pulled off track. Boom, I just hit a wall. Boom, I just hit a wall. Versus if you just stayed looking down range and let those things, whiz by you or other people handle them, you stay in your lane. You stay with that forward progress. And the point being is, as you're looking down that road in the future, is you see those problems coming and you have time to, slightly steer around them or put things in place, right? Think of it like you're Mad Max, right? You deploy your missiles and you blow it out of the way, right? So you can keep going. But you have time to react and anticipate and formulate a response to those things if you can see it coming because you're looking down the road. If you're so busy looking and dealing with this issue that's right in front of you or right beside you and it's constantly pulling you to the side, well, guess what? You're not going to see. Boom, that next thing coming that may be a mile down the road still, but because you haven't looked up in however long to see it, again, it's just going to smash you. And then you get into this cycle, this vicious cycle of constant reactionary. I'm dealing with these crashes. I'm dealing with these bumps. I'm dealing with these things that keep happening to you because you've lost your ability to see into the future and anticipate and plot your course through these obstacles as always will be there, right? No business has smooth sailing in that sense, right? There will always be something, external factors that are trying to make these barriers, right, to your success or to your team's success. And you as the leader has to be able to ask yourself and keep this at the forefront of your mind of where are we going? As me being the pilot of this aircraft or the captain of this ship, where am I taking us? Where is that direction for us headed? And be able to stay focused on that. And part of that, of course, is putting team members around you and with specific abilities to handle those things as they pop up, while you can focus on, the ultimate direction of your happening. So you need to, as part of that is, who do I need on my team that can handle these things as they pop up so I can keep us on course, straight on till morning type of thing. And it really just becomes, again, going back to that, your ability to see the future and getting yourself out of that reactionary mindset, because you let everything impact you. And as you get pulled off and start looking at one thing, it just further takes your ship off course, for using that analogy. And then same thing with the speed of business. As you slow down, like you put yourself in that kind of parking lot scenario, as you become ultra aware of everything around you and that could potentially damage you or hurt you or you run into, you lose that sense of, man, I'm just cruising and going and I'm letting these things fly by me and not concerned about them, to like, oh, there's a lamppost over there, like, well, of course you're not going to run into the lamppost, right? You recognize it, you see it. You don't need to keep looking at it as you're driving 4 miles an hour past it in the parking lot. And that's what a lot of people in business do, because they get so overwhelmed with all these various inputs that are coming into them. They lose their ability to kind of keep their foot on the gas pedal and keep going and keep that vision downrange for that. So that's my kind of ultimate takeaway for you as a business owner. How are you keeping your eyes on the prize downrange? How are you able to not ignore, because you can't just ignore problems, but how are you able to focus so much down range and be able to anticipate and see that you're able to plot that course? You're able to veer around these big mountains that may be in your way. You're able to jump over the potholes, whatever that is, kind of Radmobile racer, scenario, versus constantly looking down at your phone and getting pulled off course. Constantly, oh, I just got a bad review on my Yelp or on my Google Maps, and that just, totally threw you off course. And now it's having this ripple effect through your organization, right? And not being so worried about that. Instead, asking, okay, one bad review, what can we do to correct that? Or who in my organization can help us correct that if it is a legitimate concern that could impact our marketplace share or anything of that nature. All right. So think about that the next time you're driving, and how different you feel and your thought process is when you're flying down the freeway at 75 miles an hour versus when you pull into a parking lot and you're going 5 miles an hour, but your cautious level completely changes in the way you accept inputs and things like that. And think about how that applies to your business and what you can do to change that. And spoiler alert, I am by no means saying stay 75 miles down a parking lot, right? Don't do that. That's not what I'm saying at all. The takeaway is the mindset and the difference of how we do those inputs. So don't use this in your court of law when you get busted for speeding through a parking lot, okay? Just don't do that. It's not safe. All right, everybody, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know in the comments. Likes, shares, subscribes are always welcome. It helps me reach more people, grow the channel, and bring you more amazing guests as they want to be a part of this community. So thank you. I really do appreciate your support. And if there's anything I can do for you, please feel free to reach out, Kale at kalehouserleadership.com, and we'll talk to you soon, no matter where you're at in the world. Have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.